Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive, ticking time bomb of mid-century engineering. We're unpacking the incredibly complex structural crisis that's currently threatening the largest human-made reservoir on planet Earth. This isn't just an infrastructure glitch, it is rapidly becoming one of the absolute most pressing emergencies of our time. Okay, let's just pause for a second and think about this massive number, 180 billion. Right now, as we speak, there are 180 billion cubic meters of water just sitting there, waiting, behind the Kariba Dam. It stretches across 5,400 square kilometers, holding back the mighty Zambezi River right at the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. I mean, it's a volume of water so immense, it's honestly hard to even wrap your head around it. And here is the kicker. If this structure gives way, 3.5 million people living downstream will have less than 8 hours to evacuate. We're definitely not talking about a minor leak here. We're talking about a catastrophic, apocalyptic release of all 180 billion cubic meters of that water. So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer to figure out exactly how this celebrated marvel turned into a ticking clock. We'll cover 1. The world's largest dam, 2. The deepening plunge pool, 3. The impossibility ladder, 4. How arch dams fail, 5. The cascade effect, and 6. Time is running out. Section 1. The world's largest dam. We've got to start by looking at the sheer, almost impossible scale of Kariba. Built way back between 1955 and 1959 by a French construction firm, this thing is an absolute beast. It stands 128 meters tall and 579 meters wide, and it was built using the absolute highest tech concrete available at the time. And the economic stakes? They are astronomical. Kariba pumps out 1,626 megawatts of power. That supplies roughly 40% of the combined electricity for all industrial operations in both Zambia and Zimbabwe. We're talking the copper smelters in the Zambian copper belt, the steel mills, literally even the pumped water supply going to the capital cities of Harare and Lusaka. It is, without a doubt, the beating heart of the entire region's economy. Section 2. The deepening plunge pool. But here's the problem. Directly beneath this massive power generator lies a growing, completely invisible mechanical flaw. You see, for decades, the intensely turbulent water being released from the dam's spillway gates has essentially been acting like a giant drill, carving a massive hole directly into the riverbed below. And there is a terrifying gap between what the original engineers expected to happen and today's reality. That plunge pool was originally designed to hit a safe, stable equilibrium depth of about 30 meters. But current surveys, they show it's over 80 meters deep in places. That's a full 50 meters deeper than anyone planned for. And worse, this erosion is creeping dangerously close to the toe, the very base of the dam itself. This isn't just some routine maintenance headache. It's a literal existential threat. Dr. Munadafa, the chief executive of the Zambezi River Authority, was incredibly blunt in his 2023 annual report. He stated the rate of this plunge pool scouring is a threat that can't just be monitored anymore. It has to be stopped. Why? Because if that scour reaches the downstream face of the dam, the structural integrity of the entire concrete arch becomes indeterminate. And let me tell you, in engineering speak, indeterminate is just a very polite word for an unpredictable, runaway structural failure. Section 3. The impossibility ladder. To really understand how we got to this super alarming point, we have to trace what I like to call the impossibility ladder. How does a structure go from perfectly safe to dangerously unpredictable? Well, over the decades, confidence completely eroded. In 1959, this dam was the ultimate pride of African engineering. And throughout the 1960s, everyone just took its stability for granted. But then, by the 70s, the plunge pool started showing these really anomalous depths. Fast forward to 2010, and an underwater acoustic survey dropped a bombshell. The pool had grown 10 meters deeper in just 1 decade. That's literally the height of a 3-story building. That sparked global panic. By 2014, an international coalition, including the World Bank and the African Development Bank, rushed to approve a $294 million emergency rehab program. And yet, by 2023, the operator officially recognized that the scouring was a threat that couldn't be solved just by keeping an eye on it. Section 4. How arch dams fail. So, how exactly does a highly engineered concrete wall that's 128 meters tall and nearly 600 meters wide actually break? Let's get into the mechanics of it. In most of the models they run, it's not going to be a sudden, explosive shattering of concrete out of nowhere. Instead, it's a piping failure. You see, the foundation underneath Kariba isn't some perfect uniform slab. It's made of a fractured rock called quartz mica gneiss. Water eventually finds a tiny, microscopic path through the absolute weakest joint down there. Over time, thanks to decades of pressure and that massively growing plunge pool, the path gets bigger and bigger. A 2016 independent engineering report actually documented widening cracks in the downstream face of the concrete. Because of this, there are now over 200 sensors packed inside the dam, just constantly logging the strain. And history gives us a pretty grim look at how this plays out. Remember, Kariba isn't just a rigid block, it's a double curvature concrete arch. It works by transferring the immense, crushing weight of the water outwards into its abutments, the rock walls on either side of the river. If those abutments shift even a fraction of a single degree, because the foundation beneath them has been eaten away, the stress redistributes catastrophically. The St. Francis Dam in California in 1928 and the Malpasset Dam in France in 1959, they both failed in exactly this way. Unanticipated foundation movement in a double curvature arch dam is pretty much a guaranteed recipe for disaster. And remember, Kariba is the largest double curvature arch dam ever built. Section 5, the cascade effect. So if that foundation gives way and the arch fails under a full hydrostatic load, the downstream domino effect is almost unthinkable. Here is the sequential nightmare, step by agonizing step. Step 1. The town of Kariba, which has a population of 29,000 and sits just 3 kilometers below the dam, would literally be wiped off the map in a matter of minutes by the initial surge. Step 2. Over the next 1 to 3 hours, a gigantic flood wave slams into the communities of Chirondo, Kanya, and Luanga. Step 3. Moving regionally right into Mozambique, the city of Tere, home to 300,000 people, would be entirely overwhelmed within 10 hours. This spans across 3 entire nations and represents the absolute worst-case freshwater disaster scenario currently modeled in all of sub-Saharan Africa.
Now you might be thinking, can't the next major dam down the river just catch all that water? Well, absolutely not. Kahora Basa has a maximum flood routing capacity of 13,000 cubic meters per second. But if Kariba collapses, engineering models predict an initial apocalyptic pulse of up to 70,000 cubic meters per second. Kahora Basa wouldn't even act as a speed bump. It simply can't absorb that volume. It would be violently overtopped and would likely fail itself within hours, massively compounding the disaster.
Section 6. Time is running out. Let's pull away from those massive macro models for a second and focus on the micro reality of a single engineer looking at a screen today. Because right now, we are flat out fighting the clock. Picture this. It's September 2023. An engineering team drops a bright yellow remotely operated underwater vehicle 80 meters down into that plunge pool. Lead engineer Joyce Mukaya is watching the live camera feed right from the crest of the dam. Down at 65 meters depth, the sonar pings something horrifying. A massive 4.7 meter wide cavity actively eroding right underneath the concrete apron. Cross-referencing the data from the year prior, she realizes a terrifying truth. The cavity had grown 30 centimeters in just 12 months. She had to radio the site manager with a very grim update. Basically, nature's timeline is not playing nice with human engineering schedules. The pool is simply not waiting around for them to fix it. And to make matters worse, even the multi-million-dollar effort to reshape that plunge pool is hitting massive roadblocks. When contractors finally started digging, they found out the erosion had cut much further into that weak, nice bedrock than any of their initial models had predicted. That meant they had to completely re-engineer the fix, which is wildly expensive. By 2022, the Zambezi River Authority had to admit the project was already delayed by over 3 years. As it stands right now, this totally critical rehabilitation work isn't even scheduled to finish before 2028. That leaves the dam operating incredibly dangerously outside its design margins for years to come. Sure, authorities say the dam is safe, but honestly, that just means the sensors aren't showing an imminent collapse happening today. It definitely does not mean the structure is sound. So, as those 200 sensors continuously log the strain, and as the spillway jets keep cutting deeper into the rocks somewhere in the Zambezi Gorge tonight, 180 billion cubic meters of water are just sitting there, waiting behind the concrete. We're left with this final, genuinely chilling thought to chew on. If a 30-centimeter cavity grows during a single year of active rehabilitation, what do the next several years of uncompleted repair look like? And if the absolute largest arch dam ever built is now structurally indeterminate, what does that mean for the next dam in line? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.